Vital information has finally been released about how Freddie Gray sustained the injuries that likely led to him dying in a hospital a week after being arrested. Now, this is according to Baltimore's medical examiner. They found that Freddie Gray's fatal spinal injury was caused when he slammed into the back of a police transport van in which he'd been placed after his arrest. They said that the evidence did not show that he had sustained those particular injuries during his actual arrest or being moved to the vehicle. Now, the medical examiner could well be wrong, that's possible, but that is the official information that has been released so far, and directly, I hope, contravenes the popular wisdom that's been going out in the past at least 24 hours, that they have tried to make it seem as if Freddie Gray likely caused the injury to himself. And so we're going to show you quite a few people, both in terms of the police, the official reports, also the media, trying to make you believe that he did this to himself. And it's possibly consistent with what the medical examiner says, but there's other contravening evidence that makes it seem like that's incredibly unlikely. Now, the information that led to this idea that he possibly did to himself comes from this, from the Washington Post reporting. A prisoner sharing a police transport van with Freddie Gray told investigators that he could hear Gray banging against the walls of the vehicle and believed that he was intentionally trying to injure himself, according to a police document obtained by the Washington Post. The prisoner, who is currently in jail, was separated from Gray by a metal partition and could not see him, which is a very important distinction. Now, this prisoner was both not in the vehicle with Gray the entire time that Gray was being transported.
He was only with him. The prisoner
at the very end.
Was the last stop.
The last stop.
5 minutes.
Could not see him. And, well, we'll get to more details later on. But this is what they were trying to run with, the idea that, oh, he was this crazy person who purposefully injured himself and tragically caused his own death. That's the idea.
Let me tell you why no part of this is to be believed, and I didn't need to read one piece of evidence.
What's that?
Because the whole point that the cops made is that they finished their investigation, and we're handing it over to the state's attorney, and they're going to determine it. We can't release any information.
Yeah.
Except this. So, like, they leaked the one thing that helped them. They leaked it because it was one thing that helped them. Mm. They made a big show about, they were almost, I'm going to touch your hand in this purpose, so just be prepared for, they were like, I want to tell you what's going on. I so badly want to tell you, but I can't.
I wish.
I can't. It's not you, it's me.
By the way, he might have done it himself.
Right, he did it himself.
At the same time.
Also, now we're going to get, we got some clips on this, but if you were doing this to yourself, you don't break your spine, you split your head open.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't hit your back against the wall.
In the long tradition of prisoners who have hurt themselves to force themselves to go to the hospital, and I don't have any problem believing that that's happened.
That happens, yeah.
Thousands of times, right? Mm-hmm. But you do it by hitting your head. You don't.
Or you can control it to some extent.
Even if you go too far, you might actually, I got it. Some prisoners have probably legitimately hurt themselves, but they didn't sever their spines. It's inconceivable.
They didn't throw their back against the side of a vehicle. That's
inconceivable. Insanity. And it's inconceivable that this guy wasn't encouraged to say this. We don't even know by the way, they were leaking this. Who is this guy? Nobody knows. Don't know.
But let's just leave the information out there for a few days before identifying him.
What about his lawyer? Can we talk to his lawyer? We don't know who his lawyer is.
Don't know who he is.
Don't know who his
And he couldn't see him.
Nothing. No, we don't know.
Yeah. So we do know one thing. He is an expert on being able to differentiate a body hitting a piece of metal, whether it was intentional or not. He can differentiate that without having to see him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that's what we're led to believe. Now, we have a statement from the attorney for the Gray family who says, "We disagree with any implication that Freddie Gray severed his own spinal cord. We question the accuracy of the police reports we've seen thus far, including the police report that says Mr. Gray was arrested without force or incident." Now, we want to play a couple of clips for you from Fox News because it's intended to demonstrate that between the time when the prisoner who shared the vehicle with him, they released this information allegedly from him without any supplementary evidence about who he is or his credibility or how he decided that Gray was doing it himself, the media picked it up and they ran with it because they want to discredit him before the actual information comes out.
When they say, just real quick, when we say they in the media might
I mean
Fox
specifically. I'm not saying CNN and MSNBC.
The cops who want to discredit him. But real quick, as you listen to all this, the frame you should have for this is that back on April 23rd, Commissioner Batts in Baltimore, that's his name, right? Commissioner Batts said that the second prisoner, when asked to describe what he had seen, was, quote, mostly quiet. The commissioner of the Baltimore police said on April 23rd that guy was mostly quiet. But now, what do you know? We can't release anything. But the other prisoner said he did it. to himself.
Yeah, the one piece of evidence. So yes, very important to keep that in your mind. This is going to be Bo Dietl speaking on Fox News.
And what happened in Baltimore, again, I used to be a homicide detective. I had guys where I locked up would bang their heads on the cell doors until their heads opened up, and when they were bleeding, I had to take them to the hospital.
To make it look like the cops did it?
I don't know what they're making because they were on drugs, and I'm just hoping that they did toxicology on that young man when they took him into the hospital, because I really feel mentally he was not really with it, and possibly he was on drugs.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure
on drugs, insane.
Right, you were a great detective, but
Probably.
the fact is he has a very impressive record, Bo Dietl. But again, like,
Does he really?
yeah. I've been a couple movies based on him, and they only make movies about awesome people.
Yeah, awesome people.
That's right.
Who do great work.
But he said it right there. You take off. I'm take off my Orioles hat just for a moment. My hair still is okay. I only put this hat on just before the show. So, but you bang your head against the wall, deals against you
Just split the skin.
You split
Just
your
split
skin. Freddie Gray, in addition to the Commissioner Batts saying that the other prisoner was mostly quiet, Freddie Gray has absolutely no injuries consistent with someone trying to injure themselves. When you're handcuffed and in leg irons, you have one way to hurt yourself: the front of your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It defies logic, and of course, every time that there are wounds that cannot be identified from police when the accusation isn't the police punched me, right, or the police pistol whipped me, it is always like if a guy's got he did that to himself. That's just,
of course,
that's just what cops say. It's what he did to himself.
Yeah, and by the way, again, keep this in the back of your mind that we've been detailing over the course of this week the concept of these rough rides where they know people.
Nickel rides.
That's another name for it?
Nickel rides.
So they purposefully put them in the vehicle so they could be roughed up, and they've had to pay out millions of dollars because of this sort of policy.
They killed the guy in 2005, Don D. Johnson. They killed
in Baltimore.
In Baltimore with a nickel ride. He got a multi-million-dollar settlement. Unless this has changed in the last week, a multi-million-dollar settlement. I think $4-point-some million. Might have been $2-point-something million, but it was maxed out at the time at $200,000. Yeah. And again, same thing.
So we know that this is going on.
Right.
And by the way, if you know that on the one hand you have this aura of this history of doing these rough rides, and as Bo Dietl says, every detective knows that they'll purposefully hit their head against the wall. Maybe you restrain them when you put them in the vehicle for either of those reasons.
And that memo had gone out in Baltimore telling them to do it. The union is now already fighting back. The only union that I can't really get behind the sport of is now fighting back, saying that they got that only a few days before. By the way, I'm sorry, but that was before.
Still before.
And cops don't read it. I believe that. I believe plenty of cops don't get the emails saying, here are the new things. They think they know it. They think they're just repeating stuff. I got all that. But first of all, it defies logic that when you take away somebody's ability to protect themselves in a car, that they, more than anyone else, have to be restrained. Everybody's supposed to have a seatbelt in a car, particularly people who can't protect themselves. It's not just Baltimore.
And particularly people who were dragging their legs as they were being dragged to the vehicle, apparently unable to even support themselves.
It's not even, and it's not. We're not picking on Baltimore. Nickel rides, and again, the idea that you used to have like the nickel rides at the fair, and they'd be like, woo, they'd be thrill rides. That's what it is. Yeah. It's cops' fun way of saying, this is our thrill ride. We're going to corner hard where you can't protect yourself, and you're going to slam into the side of the car. As soon as we heard that last week, I didn't need to hear any more. I don't even know whether cops roughed him up when beating him up. That's what broke his spine.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what they seem to be implying based on the...
And that's what the medical examiner and the initial findings happened. The Philadelphia Inquirer in 2001 found 20 cases of severe injuries, let me rephrase that, in nickel rides in Philadelphia, including 3 spinal cord injuries and 2 paralyzed. They settled, gave nearly $500,000 in Philadelphia, $490,000 to a guy named James McKenna, who had gotten into it with a cop at a bar one night, and one cop apparently, according to McKenna, said to the other, F this guy up when they put him in the car. The cop denies it anyway, but $500,000 later, they paid him. They broke his neck. He's okay. They broke his neck. I'd like to point out that just because it's not all race, James McKenna happened to be white. But he was drunk, and he got, as always, what it gets down to, he got belligerent with the cop, and he fought with him, and he sassed him, and they wanted to make him pay.
Yeah.
And Freddie Gray ran from them. That's the disrespect. That's what Freddie Gray did.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Freddie Gray did. So it happens again and again and again. Nickel rides, it's not just Philly, it's Baltimore. I'm sure it's a zillion other cities where they do this.
Yeah. Let's go to a little bit more of Bodie.
Now, you made a point of when you watch that video, the cell cam video, if he had a broken neck, he couldn't step into the van, and he does, not in this part of it, but when we get to the back of the van, you can see him step into it.
Well, let me tell you, spinal cord injuries with the Christopher Reeves Foundation is one of my charities. My best friend,
Here it comes
my
right up
best
here.
friend's son and my president of my company broke his neck in a diving accident. Very familiar with spinal cord injury. If, in fact, his spinal cord was severed like that, there would be no way that he could have stood up like that. That's all I'm saying as far as from a medical. And we had Dr. Bodden on last night that would verify the fact that how are you going to stand up when you have a spinal cord injury like that? You're limped, you're finished. So it could be consistent of him banging his head into the wall. I don't want to rush to judgment.
12 seconds later.
Right. Did you think possibly when the cops were chasing him, he was trying to get away, he slipped and fell and he made an injury. Now by going into the van there, he made the injury worse. That could have very well happened by him banging his head.
Thank God Dr. Dietl didn't rush to judgment. I can't remember.
He waited literally seconds.
I think
That's restraint.
I think about 15 years.
More restraint than they had on Freddie Gray when they put him in the damn
15
vehicle.
years as a New York City police detective. When did he go to a medical school?
No, he has a
Did he
friend
go at night?
who tragically had a neck injury, and that makes him an expert on it. Yeah.
But also, I love that they were like, no, the cops couldn't. That was on April 12th before we got into the nickel rides.
Yeah.
Before we figured out, oh no, he probably did it in the car. Right. So their whole line of logic, because even Commissioner Batts, who seems less offensive than most police officers in this
might be in this position.
Yeah. He said, look, he appears to help a little bit as he gets into the van.
Yeah.
Indicating to them he also thinks that it probably
and
happened
again,
but by the way, they also may, as the family's lawyer said, they don't concede anything that he wasn't roughed up while being arrested too.
Yeah, and so I mean, based on this information, it's not impossible that he did it while he was in the van. It simply says that it was while he was in the van, and then you have to use the information available and common sense, and it seems much more likely that this was a policy of the police to rough him up, or an accident based on the fact that they chose not to restrain him when he got in there.
No injuries to there, no injuries to his
exactly.
To his foot.
And we also found out today that originally the police knew that the vehicle that Gray was in had made 3 stops. They found out there was one additional stop, and we find out that at one point when they go into the van to check on Gray, he was unresponsive. And according to the prisoner that rode with him, it was after that he was making the noises that he'd injured himself, when the cops are saying at that point he was unresponsive. So the whole thing's a gigantic mess.
Out of hand. It's not a mess, it's a lie. Out of hand,
Yes.
you can dismiss that. I think the other prisoner said. And real quick, the most important thing about the fact that they made a 4th stop, the last stop was to pick up the other prisoner.
The other prisoner, yes.
This was, I think, the 3rd stop. Maybe it was the 2nd stop.
When he was found to be unresponsive.
Well, one of those is the other stop. And then there was, but what you just said, there was an extra stop. And that extra stop was revealed through the use of
private cameras.
Private cameras that the cops had found out that they made a stop. So, just for the record, the 6 cops who have been suspended who were involved in this, I don't know if it's all of them, because not all of them might have known about these stops, but some of the cops, certainly the driver, lying, not cooperating with the investigation, lying about the number of stops. They had to find out privately how many stops were made.